At the end of a long day, there is a special kind of comfort in imagining a warm kitchen after the errands are done, with the kettle just beginning to murmur and a chair waiting near the range. Tonight, we are stepping into one of those ordinary days that held far more skill and thought than they first appear to. We are going out on market day with an Edwardian housewife, not for anything grand, but for the kind of shopping that kept a family fed, clothed and running in good order. And if you listen closely, you may find that this busy old routine feels surprisingly familiar. If you enjoy these quiet journeys into everyday history, please like the video and subscribe, but only if it truly feels like your sort of place to rest. And I would love to hear where you are listening from tonight, and whether market day in your family meant a weekly trip to town, a list in a handbag, or perhaps a favorite stall holder remembered by name. So settle in now, and let the shape of an old kitchen rise up softly in your mind, the sort of room where coats hung behind the door, the fire or range held the house together, and the day began before anyone thought to call it a routine. What did market day really look like for the woman who had to remember everything the household needed before she even tied on her hat? What sounds met her in the street before she reached the square? How did she judge the freshness of fish, the firmness of butter, the worth of a piece of cloth, or the price of a chicken with one quick practiced glance? And what small comforts came home with her, tucked between the plain necessities, to make the week feel easier and a little more cheerful? If you had stood beside her basket, what would you have recognized at once? Now, very gently, let us go back to an English town in about 1908, on a market morning bright with movement and damp with the smell of cobbles and fresh produce. You can follow just behind her, close enough to hear the rustle of her skirt and the faint clink of coins in her purse as the house and the market open around you together. The day starts before the market itself, of course. It starts in the house, because for an Edwardian housewife, shopping is never a little outing detached from home. It is part of the same long ribbon of work as blacking the grate, shaking the crumbs from the tablecloth, seeing to the breakfast things, checking the coal scuttle, and making sure there is enough hot water to manage the washing up. If she is in a working class or lower middle class home, and many were, she probably does much of this herself. If she has help, it may be one general servant, often a young girl, and even then, the mistress of the house must plan, supervise, count, stretch and remember. There is no slipping out for a quick top-up while doing something else. There is no bright little supermarket trolley waiting under strip lights. There is a house to steady first, and then there is the market. You can almost feel the pace of the morning before she has even left. The kitchen is cool in some corners and warm in others, depending on the fire. The table may still hold the remains of breakfast, perhaps bread crusts, a pot of dripping, a heel of cheese, or the last spoonfuls of marmalade. A teapot lingers, strong and useful. The children, if there are children at home, bring movement and interruption. A husband may have already left for work, or may still be finishing his tea. The clock is watched. Meals ahead are already in her mind. Dinner, in the midday sense, if the household keeps that habit. Tea later on. Supper perhaps. Even before she reaches the market, she is cooking in her head. That is one of the quiet skills of this life. An Edwardian housewife does not only buy food, she buys days. She buys Monday's stew and Tuesday's pudding, and the bit left over for Wednesday's pie. She buys what will keep and what must be eaten first. She buys with the weather in mind, because a warm spell changes everything. She buys according to what is in the larder, what is due from the baker, whether washing day is approaching, and whether there will be company on Sunday. She buys with memory rather than with a glowing note on a telephone screen, and somehow the mind becomes a kind of household ledger, pantry shelf, and calendar all in one. Before leaving, she checks her purse. Money matters here, and not in an abstract way. Coins have weight and personality. Copper, silver, the small discipline of exact sums. A household budget is not a vague monthly notion, but a practical daily boundary. Rent, coal, bread, meat, milk, soap, lamp oil if used, blacklead, starch, thread, boot repairs, school needs, perhaps a little for church collection, perhaps a little for savings if times allow. You can sense how each coin spent at market has already been argued over in silence at the kitchen table. She may keep a written list, especially in a household where literacy is comfortable and paper is at hand. But just as often, much of the list lives in the head. Bread, bacon perhaps, onions, a cabbage, carrots, dripping if none remains, eggs if they are reasonably priced, butter, though butter may be dear, and margarine may be chosen for some uses, suet for pudding, a piece of brisket, a rabbit if one is available, soap, needles, perhaps a length of tape or braid if a hem needs mending. The market is not always only food. It is one of the places where the whole practical business of life gathers itself. And then at last she dresses for going out. Not in the elaborate way of fashion plates, but with care. A blouse and skirt, perhaps, or a plain dress with an apron removed for the outing. Boots. Gloves if she has them, though gloves may be saved for better wear. A jacket. A hat pinned in place. Even women doing hard domestic work were expected to be respectable in public, and respectability in the Edwardian world was a serious social language. A woman going to market does not present herself as careless if she can help it. She may not be fine, but she is tidy. The basket matters too. It might be a wicker shopping basket with a firm handle, sometimes lined with cloth. Some women carry string bags, parcels, or market baskets over the arm. Later, there might be a pram, used for shopping as much as for babies. But in 1908, the basket still has its old dignity. It is practical, slightly awkward when full, and absolutely central. If you have ever felt the swing of a heavy bag cutting into your fingers while telling yourself it will be all right once you reach home, you already understand part of the story. She steps into the street. At once the air changes. Indoors there was smoke, starch, tea, damp cloth, warm metal. Outdoors there is weather. The day may smell of wet paving stones, horse manure, fresh bread from a nearby bakehouse, and the sharp, clean green scent of vegetables newly unpacked. Edwardian streets are alive with movement that modern ears would find both noisier and stranger. Hooves strike the road, cartwheels grind, a distant driver calls to his horse, a child runs, a door bangs. Somewhere, a street seller has already begun his cry. The exact shape of market day depends on place. In a large city, the housewife may go to a street market, to regular shops, or to a covered market hall. In a smaller town, market day may mean the square filling with stalls and carts on 1 or 2 appointed days of the week. In villages, some goods are bought from shops, some from passing traders, and some perhaps from neighbours or local producers. But the principle is the same. A home must be stocked, and the woman most responsible for daily meals usually knows very well where each article can be had best. As she walks, you begin to see how social this practical errand is. Not sociable in a lazy, lingering sense, perhaps, though there is some of that too, but social in the way all neighbourhood life once was. People are known. The butcher's wife may ask after a child's cough. The greengrocer notices who has switched from apples to turnips because the week is tighter. The woman from 2 doors down is on the same road carrying a basket and a face that says she has already remembered one thing she forgot. Some things never change. There is often a rhythm to the shopping itself. Perishable things may be left until later if they need to stay fresh. Heavy items may be bought last if they are far from home, though that depends on the route and the stalls. Credit may enter the picture too. Not everyone pays everything at once. Many households, especially where wages come weekly, juggle ready money and small debts. A trusted customer might have items put down in a book to be settled later. That can be a convenience and a worry at the same time, and many women took pride in keeping their names good. You can let the image deepen now, and if your eyes grow heavy while the market comes into view, that is perfectly all right. The square is opening before you, and there is no need to hurry through it. The market itself arrives in layers. First the colour, piles of greens, carrots with earth still clinging to them, white turnips, red onions, potatoes in rough heaps, apples polished or naturally shining, depending on the seller's habits, eggs in straw-lined boxes, butter in pats or larger blocks, chickens hanging or laid ready, bunches of herbs, in season, berries bright as beads, in winter, root vegetables and sturdy brassicas that look as though they know very well how to endure a hard month. Then the sounds come closer. Stallholders call out prices or praises. Not everyone shouts with comic market gusto every minute of the day, despite what stage plays like to suggest, but there is certainly noise, persuasion, banter, and local style. A woman asks the price of kippers, another debates the weight of a joint. A barrow creaks. A child is told not to touch. Somewhere coins are counted quickly into a hand. Somewhere else there is a small dispute over the fairness of a measure. The market is a place of senses, yes, but also of judgment. An Edwardian housewife enters it alert. What she knows is worth noticing. She can tell whether greens are tired. She can see when fruit is likely to bruise before tomorrow. She knows which butcher cuts honestly and which one likes his thumb on the scale, figuratively, if not literally. She understands that the cheapest item is not always the best bargain if half of it must be trimmed away. She can smell fish and know whether today is the day to buy it. She can handle fabric and sense whether it will wear out after a few washes. Domestic skill is not decorative here. It is economically necessary. Perhaps she begins at the greengrocer's stall. Vegetables form the backbone of many meals, especially in households where meat must be stretched. Potatoes are vital. Cabbage, onions, carrots, and swedes are common and useful. Leeks in some regions. Parsnips. Celery if the budget is kind or the occasion special. Cauliflowers when in season and affordable. She chooses not just by preference but by purpose. Potatoes for boiling, mashing or baking in the oven's gentler heat. Onions for flavouring nearly everything. Carrots and turnips for soups and stews. A cabbage that can do duty in more than one meal is almost a household ally. She may ask the price per pound, or bargain if that is customary in her market. Bargaining in Edwardian England was not universal in the same way everywhere, and many shop prices were fixed, especially in established businesses. But in open markets there was often a little room for negotiation, or at least for choosing among qualities and prices. She might ask whether the bruised apples are cheaper, knowing they can go into a pie. She might accept a bunch of parsley thrown in at the end if she is a regular. These tiny courtesies oil the machinery of everyday life. The basket grows heavier. Potatoes settle at the bottom. Cabbage leaves breathe green and cool against the weave. The smell begins to build. Damp earth, onion skin, a suggestion of apples. It is the smell of dinner in progress long before a pan is set on the range. Next, perhaps the butcher. For many households, this is one of the most important and careful purchases of the week. Meat is valuable, but the form it takes varies by means. A prosperous home may buy better joints more regularly. A modest home often depends on cheaper cuts that reward long cooking. Brisket, scrag end, flank, shin, pieces for stewing, perhaps liver, perhaps a little bacon, perhaps sausages if available and trusted. Mutton remains common, and often more affordable than some cuts of beef. Pork appears in season and by region. Rabbit may be sold. Poultry is not an everyday purchase in every home, despite what old paintings full of shining birds might imply. At the butcher's, knowledge deepens further. The housewife does not stand there as a passive receiver of whatever is handed over. She may specify exactly what she wants the cut for: something for boiling, something for stewing, a small piece with enough fat for flavor but not too much waste. Bones can matter too, because stock is not a fashionable extra. It is part of making the most of what is bought. A marrow bone or soup bone can enrich meals beyond its size. The butcher's shop or stall has its own atmosphere, different from the greengrocer's. Cool, metallic, slightly sweet with fresh meat, sawdust perhaps underfoot in a shop, hooks and blocks and white aprons. Men often worked the cutting side, though women were active in many family businesses too, and the butcher's wife might be every bit as important in accounts and service. Orders are wrapped in paper, tied with string. The neat parcel disappears into the basket, and with it, a good portion of the week's spending. And then there is bread. Bread is constant. A family can forgive many things if there is bread enough. In the Edwardian period, most urban and town households buy bread rather than bake all of it at home, though home baking still happens, especially depending on class, region, equipment, and habit. The baker's window can be a place of temptation as much as necessity. Large loaves, cottage loaves, perhaps tin loaves, crusty rolls, buns, currant bread, seed cake on special days, and plain biscuits. The smell alone is enough to make the most disciplined list wobble slightly around the edges. You can imagine her pausing there for half a second longer than she meant to. 1 loaf is required. 2 if the family is large or appetites good. But perhaps today there is also a small treat if the week allows. A bun for the children, a little currant loaf, a slab of gingerbread. Not always, not lavishly. Yet these small extras matter. They are part of the gentle arithmetic of morale that every good homemaker has always known. You cannot feed a household on sentiment, but you can brighten it with 1 sticky bun on a grey afternoon. Tea, sugar, and butter often come from a grocer rather than the open market, though arrangements vary. The grocer's shop is one of the most characteristic rooms of the period. Drawers, bins, scales, jars, sacks, tins, bars of soap, candles if still used, packets of starch, blue bags for whitening, rice, sago, tapioca, cocoa, treacle, perhaps tinned salmon or sardines, jars of pickles, mustard, and all the useful dry or preserved things that turn a house from merely occupied into supplied. The smell in such a shop can be wonderful. Tea, coffee, dried fruit, soap, spice, wood, paper, and sometimes paraffin if the premises carry it. It is part pantry, part treasure chest, part accountant's office. Tea is not an afterthought. By the Edwardian years, tea is deeply woven into British domestic life across classes, though the quality and quantity differ. A housewife might buy loose tea measured out by weight, choosing according to purse and preference. Sugar, too, is a staple, whether white or brown, granulated or loaf sugar in some cases, though cutting and handling loaf sugar belonged more to an earlier time and certain households. Butter is carefully considered. Good butter is dear. Margarine, introduced and increasingly used in working homes, offers a cheaper alternative for cooking or spreading. Housewives often distinguished between what was bought for best, what for every day, and what for baking. The grocer may know her usual order. That familiarity can be both convenience and quiet scrutiny. In small communities, everyone knows a little more about one another's circumstances than modern people often do. If she buys less tea this week, someone may notice. If she asks for a cheaper soap, it may be observed. Yet there is also comfort in being known, in hearing the usual £1/4 before you have even asked. A trusted shopkeeper can be a sort of domestic ally. Milk is another essential and another variable. In towns, milk may come from a dairyman's shop, a milk walk, or delivery. Freshness matters greatly, and milk in this period is not handled with modern refrigeration. That means households must plan around quick use, especially in warmer weather. Cream, cheese, eggs, and butter all require judgment and care. If she buys eggs, she may hold each one with the calm attention of a jeweler inspecting pearls. Fresh eggs are precious in puddings, cakes, and plain meals alike. Fish enters the weekly round, depending on region, religion, price, and habit. Coastal towns naturally differ from inland ones. Herring, kippers, cod, haddock, plaice, and other familiar fish appear. Fresh fish stalls have a smell that is not subtle. It arrives before you see them. But a good fish stall, well attended, is a sign of proper trade rather than something to fear. The housewife who buys fish often plans to cook it quickly. Fried fish, baked fish, fish pie, perhaps fish with parsley sauce if the ingredients are there and the family willing. Not every child is willing. History is full of noble ideals and less noble opinions about fish. Alongside food, market day may include all the little household necessities that never stop needing replacement. Soap for washing clothes and bodies, black lead for polishing the stove or grate, blue for whitening linens, candles or matches, needles, cotton, darning wool, hooks and eyes, pins, tape, buttons, perhaps a cheap apron fabric or a remnant suitable for children's clothes. This is where the shopping basket becomes not only heavy but oddly mixed, smelling at once of cabbage and carbolic, bread and soap, perhaps with a paper parcel of bacon adding itself firmly to the blend. It is not the scent a modern candle company is likely to bottle, though perhaps one should. If she passes a draper's stall or shop, she may stop. Clothing in the Edwardian household is not managed casually. Garments are mended, turned, let down, taken in, brushed, aired, and expected to last. Buying new cloth, even a modest length, carries more significance than picking up an extra t-shirt on sale. A housewife may examine flannelette for children's nightgowns, calico for household uses, print for aprons, serge for sturdier wear if means allow. She rubs the fabric between finger and thumb, considering washability, warmth, and durability. Sewing is not a quaint hobby on the side. It is part of keeping the family decent and the budget alive. You begin to notice how much of market day depends on eye, hand, and memory. There are no ingredient labels with long explanatory paragraphs. There is no online review of Mrs. Pennington's onions versus Mr. Clark's. There is no refrigerator humming patiently at home, no freezer waiting to preserve mistakes. Freshness, thrift, quantity, and use must all be held in the mind and judged on the spot. It is a form of intelligence that was widespread, often undervalued, and very exact. There may also be a little looking, not idleness exactly, but the small pause of a woman among other women noticing hats, shawls, children's boots, the new china in a window, or the sort of blouse another person has managed to make from a pattern. Market day can be one of the week's chances to see the wider local world. News travels there. Engagements, illnesses, jobs, births, gossip, prices, weather predictions, and recipes all move through the crowd. You might hear that plums are cheaper on the other side of the square, that the fishmonger is not so good this week, that someone's sister in service has come home, that there will be a church sale on Saturday. A household does not float alone. It is stitched into many others. For some women, market day may include a child in tow. This changes the pace at once. A child is useful in theory and distracting in fact, which is an old truth. A small hand must be held. A reminder to stand still must be repeated. A bun may be requested with considerable earnestness. Older children can carry a parcel, fetch from one stall, or be sent on a quick errand if the surroundings are trusted. They are also learning, almost without anyone naming it as education, how a household is run. They see prices asked, goods inspected, sums counted, courtesies exchanged. They learn where food comes from before it reaches the table. They learn that a home is not stocked by magic. Sensible children may take this in quietly. Other children may mainly remember the bun. Class differences shape all of this, but not always in the dramatic ways people expect. In wealthier Edwardian households, especially upper middle and upper class homes, the mistress may order many goods to be delivered, and servants may handle much of the daily shopping. A cook might go to market. A housekeeper might manage stores. Bills are still watched, quality still judged, and domestic management remains work, though of a different kind. In lower middle and working class homes, the housewife more often carries the direct burden herself. Yet across these different homes there is a shared element of female oversight, of planning meals and stretching resources, whether the resource is ample or narrow. If you picture a comfortable middle-class housewife on market day, you might imagine a somewhat steadier purse, perhaps a servant at home laying the fire or minding younger children, perhaps regular accounts with reliable shops rather than dependence on open market bargains. She may buy finer cuts, better tea, fruit out of season if she can afford it, or household goods from a respectable draper and grocer with polished counters. But even she must think. Entertaining, preserving standards, choosing wisely, avoiding waste, managing servants, keeping books, all of that demands attention. The Edwardian cult of domestic efficiency touched many levels of society. The home was expected to run well, and women were expected to be the engines of that smooth running. In a poorer home, the calculations are sharper and the substitutions more inventive. Meat may be bought in very small quantities or not at all some days. Bones, scraps, offal, and cheaper fish become important. Bread and tea loom large. Dripping saves many a meal. Soup, stew, suet puddings, and pies stretch ingredients kindly. Yet even here, market day is not only a tale of lack, it is also one of remarkable practical knowledge, of knowing exactly how to turn a few onions, potatoes, and a little bacon into something hot and filling by noon. If you are drifting now, keep drifting. The range is hot, and the pot will take care of itself for a while. Season matters more in this world than many modern shoppers feel now. The Edwardian housewife lives close to the calendar of produce. Spring has greens, rhubarb, perhaps early carrots. Summer brings berries, peas, beans, lettuces, soft fruits, and a little ease in choice if money allows. Autumn offers apples, pears, root vegetables, game in some places, and preserving work. Winter narrows the palate. The market changes its face as the year turns, and she changes with it. A good housewife knows not only what can be bought, but what ought to be bought now because it is best and cheapest in its proper season. Preserving, when possible, is another quiet branch of market day. If fruit is plentiful and affordable, she may buy extra for jam, bottling, or preserving. This is especially true in homes with some equipment, jars, pans, and enough fuel to support the work. Imagine the satisfaction of seeing a pile of plums not as one dessert, but as weeks of future sweetness. The kitchen later will fill with steam and sugar, and the shelves will receive their jewel-like reward. In humbler households, preserving may be simpler or more limited, but the instinct is the same: use abundance when it appears. The question of fuel shadows everything she buys. The range, stove, or fire determines what is practical to cook. Long-simmered dishes suit a coal range well. Ovens vary in reliability and require experience. There is no twist of a neat modern knob, and no digital beep promising exactness. Heat is watched, sensed, managed. So market day choices are partly kitchen technology choices too, though no one would have used such grand words. A cheap, tough cut of meat makes sense if there is coal enough and time enough to cook it slowly. A dish needing delicate temperature control may be more trouble than it is worth on a weekday. This is domestic engineering in a skirt and apron. And then there is the journey home. This part should not be skipped, because carrying the goods back is part of the labor. The basket is now honest in its weight. A wrapped joint, potatoes, perhaps tea and sugar, soap, bread, maybe some apples, perhaps one little treat hidden among the practical items. The handle presses into the palm, the arm adjusts. She may stop once to shift the load from one side to the other. If the road is uneven, the eggs are in mind with every step. Rain begins sometimes at precisely this moment, which feels so familiar that the centuries almost disappear. Back at the house, market day turns immediately into housework again. There is no ceremonial unpacking with matching jars and a little flute of music in the background. There is a back door, a breath, perhaps a hat removed with relief, and then the brisk sorting of goods before the next task. Perishables are seen to first, butter cool, meat somewhere safe and as protected as possible, bread put by, vegetables arranged, dry goods on the shelf, soap to the proper place, thread into the workbox. If there is a pantry, larder, cool cupboard, safe, or cellar, each item has its right spot. Storage is an art. Poor storage means spoilage, waste, and frustration. Good storage means the week runs more smoothly. The kitchen after market has a wonderful in-between feeling. It is fuller now. The room itself seems reassured. There is bread again. There are potatoes enough. The sight of a joint waiting in paper, a cabbage on the table, tea in its caddy, and eggs near the bowl gives a household a kind of quiet confidence. You may know this feeling yourself in modern form, after putting groceries away and seeing, just for a moment, that life is stocked and possible. It is one of the oldest comforts in the world. Then comes preparation. If dinner has not yet been made, she may move straight into peeling, chopping, lighting up, stirring, and washing. The market is not a separate charming excursion from domestic labor. It feeds directly into the next hour's work. Potatoes are scrubbed, onion skins fall, a stew begins, suet may be chopped for pudding, greens are washed in cold water, bread may be sliced, tea things are planned. If she has bought fish, there may be a sharp, clean smell and a little hurry. If she has splashed out on a bit of fruit, she may already be thinking of pie crust. Washing produce is not always the quick, polished affair modern packaging encourages us to imagine. Vegetables can be truly earthy. Lettuce may hide grit with determination. Leeks can carry half the field in their folds. Potatoes may need a brisk hand. The kitchen sink or basin sees much action. Water is carried, heated, used carefully. Towel, knife, board, pan, peelings, and steam begin their usual dance. There is a rhythm to capable work that can feel almost musical, not pretty music exactly, more like a trustworthy old tune. If there are children at home after school or in the house through the day, the market purchases become immediate objects of curiosity. Is there anything nice? Is a question with a long history. A child peers into the basket. A hand reaches for the currant bun before permission is given. A mother says, "Not yet." Or perhaps yes, just this once, because she knows a little sweetness can buy 5 useful minutes of peace. Domestic authority has always included strategic generosity. Mending may also follow, oddly enough. If she bought buttons or thread or a bit of tape, those things are not merely possessions. They are future work now made possible. Later in the afternoon, once the meal is underway or the washing up managed, she may sit near the best light and repair a cuff, patch a knee, or turn a collar. Market day often renews not only the pantry, but the work basket. Homes were maintained by 100 small continuations, not by one grand effort. Some Edwardian households had regular weekly patterns into which market day fitted neatly. Monday might be washing day, Tuesday ironing, Wednesday mending, Thursday baking, Friday cleaning or fish, Saturday preparation for Sunday. The exact pattern varies, but the principle of structured routine is strong. Market day may be chosen to align with wages, with local market schedules, or with household work. This means the housewife's shopping is not random. It is synchronized with the domestic week, the way trains once tried to be with timetables, though with more success than some trains. There is another side to market day too, and that is status. What a woman bought, where she bought it, whether she paid promptly, and how she presented herself all carried meaning. Respectability, thrift, cleanliness, and competence were observed and discussed. This could be tiresome, no doubt. One can imagine many a woman inwardly wishing the entire neighborhood would kindly mind its own onions. But it also meant skill was visible. A woman known to keep a good table on limited means earned real admiration. Her management was a social fact. Cookbooks, women's magazines, and household guides of the period often addressed this ideal of management quite directly. They advised on economical cuts, seasonal buying, preserving, nutritious soups, and how to feed a family sensibly. The Edwardian years loved advice almost as much as they loved starch. Yet practical women often knew as much from habit and inheritance as from print. Recipes might be less exact than modern ones because much was understood by eye and hand. A good-sized piece, a moderate oven, enough flour to make a paste. Such phrases suggest calm confidence and also just a little room for mischief if one's oven had opinions. The market itself could include pleasures beyond necessity. Flowers, for example. Not every woman bought them, but flowers were sold in many markets, and even a small bunch could brighten a table or mantel. Violets, wallflowers, daffodils in season, perhaps a potted plant if there was a windowsill to spare, and pennies to justify it. A bunch of flowers in a modest home does not mean extravagance so much as human nature. Beauty has always found a way in, even when budgets tighten. There might be crockery stalls, second-hand dealers, hawkers with ribbons, combs, shoelaces, kitchen tools, or little household notions. Earthenware bowls, spoons, tinware, brushes, and graters all form part of the domestic world. A woman may eye a new pudding basin or a better scrubbing brush with serious interest. These are not thrilling purchases in the modern commercial sense, but they are satisfying. A good brush, after all, is the kind of thing no one praises until the old one falls to pieces. Think, too, of the body doing all this. We speak often of housework in terms of duties and time, but less often of movement. Walking to market, standing at stalls, carrying weight, climbing steps home, bending over baskets, reaching into cupboards, peeling, stirring, scrubbing, sewing. An Edwardian housewife's day uses the whole frame. Tiredness is not dramatic here. It is steady and ordinary, yet so is endurance. You can feel it in the set of her shoulders and the efficiency of her hands. When we say housewife in the Edwardian sense, we should also remember the emotional weather she carried. She was not only an efficient mechanism for purchasing and boiling, she might be cheerful one week and anxious the next. She might be thinking of a child's boots wearing thin, of a husband's uncertain wages, of a Sunday visit from relatives, of making the house look nice, of whether there is enough sugar left for jam, of a mother she learned these skills from, or a daughter she is passing them to. Market day carries all these thoughts quietly under its practical surface. In some homes, the husband may accompany her on occasion, especially on Saturdays, or help carry goods if he has time. But the mental management still tends to remain hers. He may carry the basket. She knows what goes in it. That pattern has a very long life. There is a gentle smile in that, and perhaps many listeners will recognize it without any need for me to underline the point. Let us linger for a moment in the kitchen later that afternoon. The shopping is done. The main meal has been cooked or is cooking. There is a pause, or something like one. Perhaps she sits with a cup of tea before beginning the next round. The room has changed since morning. The basket is empty. The shelves look steadier. A loaf waits under cloth. A pan gives off slow, savoury smells. There may be an apple peel drying on the table edge, a newspaper parcel folded aside, a child's voice in another room, the faint ticking of the clock. This is one of the true rewards of market day. Not luxury, readiness. And readiness was precious in a world with fewer safety nets inside the home. If weather turned bad, if wages came short, if a child fell ill, if a neighbour needed help, the wise little stock of groceries and household goods made all the difference. A jar of dripping, a loaf, tea, potatoes, soap, thread, and coal in the scuttle could carry a family through many small disturbances. Domestic security was built out of such plain things. It still is, though the wrapping and branding have become much more excitable. The more you look at Edwardian market day, the clearer it becomes that shopping was a form of household strategy. Every purchase had consequences. Buy too much meat, and there might not be enough for soap or sugar. Buy poor fruit, and it spoils. Forget blacklead, and the grate looks neglected. Miss the market, and the whole week becomes awkward. Successful shopping saved time later, eased meals, preserved respectability, and kept comfort alive in the small practical ways that matter most. This is also why memory clings so warmly to such scenes. Many older listeners will know the feeling of women who managed homes through habit, thrift, and repeated rounds of careful shopping, even if the exact century differs. There is something deeply recognizable in the rustle of paper parcels, in the smell of tea caddy and bread bin, in the way one woman could look into a cupboard and know exactly what the next 3 meals would be. That kind of knowing is almost a language of home. The Edwardian period sat in an interesting place between old and new. Shops were increasingly organized, branded goods more visible, transport improving, urban markets flourishing, and domestic advice circulating widely. Yet much of life still depended on local supply, manual effort, face-to-face buying, and the preservation of household knowledge from one woman to another. It was modern enough to feel close and old enough to feel enchanted by distance. That is perhaps why it draws us in so gently. If you imagine the week continuing after market day, you can follow the purchases into their destinations. The brisket becomes stew with onions and carrots, the bones in rich soup. The stale end of the loaf becomes breadcrumbs or toast. The apples become pie or stewed fruit. The suet goes into dumplings. The eggs appear in pudding. The soap turns wash day into sharp-smelling clouds of steam. The thread closes a child's cuff. The whole household is shaped by what came home in that basket. Nothing is isolated. That may be the most important truth of all. Market day is linked to cooking, cleaning, sewing, child-rearing, budgeting, hospitality, health, and memory. The Edwardian housewife may not have spoken of systems, but she lived inside one and largely kept it running. Her reward was often quiet and immediate. A meal served on time, a cupboard not empty, children fed, a husband satisfied, a room in order, a little treat saved for tea, the comfort of having managed. It is not a flashy kind of achievement, which may be why it deserves such gentle remembering. There are market mornings in different seasons worth pausing over too. In autumn, imagine the glow of apples and pears, marrows, onions hanging in bunches, the deep comfort of roots and late cabbage. The air carries a chill that makes the butcher's parcels and baker's warmth especially pleasing. In spring, the market feels hopeful, with new greens and eggs seeming fresher somehow, and perhaps a bunch of daffodils caught your eye. In summer, fruit softens everything. Jam pans begin to whisper from shop windows. Children become sticky. In winter, the market tightens its belt. The vegetables are hard-working and serious, and so is everyone else. Special occasions change the shopping too. At Christmas, there might be extra bustle for puddings, spices, dried fruit, nuts, a goose or other bird if possible, better meat, a richer cake, oranges, perhaps a little wine or spirits depending on the household. Easter, Sunday dinners, christenings and visitors all altered the basket. A capable housewife adapted the ordinary pattern to these little festivals without losing control of the week entirely. It is very much like trying to host a family lunch now without forgetting the milk or overbuying biscuits. The centuries nod to one another. We should also notice the role of trust. In an age before universal packaging and standardization, trust in sellers mattered greatly. You trusted the dairyman's milk, the butcher's honesty, the baker's weight, the grocer's tea, the draper's cloth. Reputation was part of commerce. That is why regular custom mattered, why women returned to known shops, and why a good relationship with traders had practical value. The market was not anonymous. It ran on memory, manner, and repeated exchange as much as on goods. Not every market day was pleasant, of course. Some were rushed, wet, tiring, or pinched by worry. Some baskets felt heavier than others. Some weeks there was less choice than one hoped. But the warmth of the subject lies not in pretending every day was charming. It lies in seeing how much care and capability lived inside these ordinary errands. The dignity is in the doing, and perhaps that is why old domestic histories can be so soothing. They return us to a world where importance was often measured in loaves, buttons, broth, and clean pinafores. Not because those things were small, but because they were the very substance of daily living. If your eyes are closed now, you can still hear the market faintly and the kitchen more clearly. The house has drawn you back in. Toward evening, the day settles. Supper may be simpler than the main midday meal. Bread and cheese, perhaps, or leftovers reheated, tea poured again, children washed and put toward bed. The purchases of the morning are already disappearing into use, which is the fate of all good household management. The basket may be set aside near the door, ready for next time. The purse is lighter. The cupboard is fuller. The room smells of cooked onions, blacked grate, and tea leaves. A small lamp may be lit. Curtains are drawn. Outside, the market square empties and the carts are gone. In homes with older daughters, they may have watched and helped, learning without ceremony. In homes with younger sons, they may have been sent to fetch a loaf or carry home fish and chips later in the period. In homes where grandmothers lived nearby, advice and comparison flowed freely, not always peacefully. In my day was almost certainly not invented yesterday. Yet this intergenerational passing on of shopping wisdom, cooking judgment, and household caution was one of the ways domestic knowledge survived. There is also pleasure in imagining the little victories, finding particularly good apples at a fair price, getting an extra sprig of herbs from the stall holder, making a penny stretch farther than expected, bringing home exactly enough to produce 2 good meals and a pudding, seeing children pleased by a bun, sitting down at last and knowing that, whatever else the week may hold, tomorrow's dinner is already half solved. Such victories rarely enter grand history books, but they make up the texture of real life. When people today speak admiringly of being resourceful, organized, or good at running a home, they are often describing skills very much like these, though the setting has changed. The Edwardian housewife did not have convenience on her side in the modern sense. What she had was practice, observation, and continuity. She knew her house, her people, her market, and her means. She knew how to turn movement in a crowded square into nourishment on a plate and order on a shelf. And that ability shaped family memory. Children may forget exact dates and sermons and even school lessons, but they remember the smell of a loaf brought in fresh, the winter stew, the little paper parcel from the baker, the market basket under the table, the mother or grandmother who somehow always seemed to know what was needed. Home is often recalled not as a list of facts, but as a pattern of competent love, repeated until it became invisible. Market day was part of that pattern. As the Edwardian period moved onward, change would continue. Chain stores would expand, packaged goods would grow more common, women's roles would shift in some ways and remain stubbornly demanding in others, and the old open market would slowly lose some ground in certain places while holding fast in others. But in 1908, on an ordinary market morning, so much still depends on the eye, the hand, the purse, and the basket. It is a world close enough to touch. If you like, linger just a little longer by the table. There is a folded cloth, the faint ring left by a cup, a loaf in waiting, and the happy plainness of a room that has been worked in well. The woman of the house may not describe herself as skillful. She may only say she has got the shopping done. But inside that simple sentence lives budgeting, nutrition, logistics, timing, social intelligence, memory, restraint, taste, and care. It is rather a lot to fit into one market basket. And now, as we come near the end of our quiet visit, it is easy to see the bridge to the present. Many things have changed. We push trolleys instead of carrying wicker baskets. We compare prices under bright lights or on screens. Our kitchens hum with refrigerators and timers. Bread comes sliced, butter in printed wrappers, tea in neat boxes, and if we forget onions, there is usually another shop, just a short drive away. Yet the old instincts remain. We still stand in our kitchens and think ahead to the week. We still wonder what will stretch, what will keep, what everyone will eat without complaint, and whether there is enough milk for morning. Even now, care often appears in small practical forms. A woman, or a man, or anyone running a home, buys the soup ingredients because someone is tired, picks up a favorite biscuit because guests are coming, checks the cupboard before bad weather, notices the washing powder is low, or plans tomorrow's meal while putting away tonight's groceries. It is the same quiet habit of looking after people through ordinary things. No fanfare, just the household held together by memory and attention. And perhaps that is why an Edwardian market day feels so warm to remember. Beneath the hats, baskets, and cobbled streets, it is a story about making a home ready, about returning with what is needed, about seeing plain items become comfort by evening. That old skill has never really gone away. It only changes its packaging. So tonight, as the market square fades and the kitchen settles into lamplight, thank you for coming along on this small errand into the past. I hope it has left you with the soft good feeling of a stocked shelf, a warm cup near the stove, and a home made ready for another day. Good night, and may your sleep be as calm as an Edwardian kitchen after the shopping is put away.